What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my updated top 40 week 14 wide receiver rankings. Probably the last week, maybe last 2 weeks before your fantasy playoffs. Want to make sure your lineups are looking strong. If you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe. But let's just dive right into the rankings here. And my tier 1 is the same as the rankings I did earlier on in the week. It's Jamar Chase. He's the one and only wide receiver 1. With Nico Collins on bye, I just think he's separated himself at this point. He is the wide receiver 1 by 3 PPR points per game. So Jamar Chase, my one and only tier 1 wide receiver. Now looking at tier 2, still a ton of really strong options. We're going Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, and Mike Evans. For Puka here, in his healthy games, he's averaging 20 points per game. Justin Jefferson had a nice bounce back in week 13. Also a nice matchup. Falcons are allowing the 8th most points per game to the wide receiver position. T. Higgins, at some point, just got to give him his respect. He's the wide receiver 4 in points per game. Just keeps on producing. A.J. Brown, production has been a little bit iffy as of late. It's really just a touchdown issue. He has 1 touchdown in the last 6 games. They're going to put up points against the Panthers, but I could also see this being just like a monster Saquon Barkley day. Limited passing volume, just based on the game script. I believe they're like 12.5-point favorites. So I still think A.J. Brown deserves to be in tier 2, but I could see, kind of a similar game that he's had as of late. Cooper Kupp coming off by far his worst game of the season. He's still been super consistent, not panicking. And then Mike Evans, I will say, he did not practice on Thursday with a hamstring and calf injury. We'll see if he's good to go. This is definitely, could be like just playing it safe, veteran wide receiver. If he's playing, I'm starting him in my lineup. Now looking at tier 3, going to start off with George Pickens going up against the Browns. Just been a really nice option with Russ at quarterback, 16 points per game. Drake London, think I moved him up 1 spot, flipped him with Jacoby Myers just due to Jacoby Myers' injury. He missed practice with an ankle injury, but without Devontae Adams, Myers is averaging 15.8 points per game. Drake London has commanded a lot of volume as of late, 36 targets in his last 3 games. Also a really nice matchup. The Vikings are allowing the most points per game to the wide receiver position. My issue is just with the quarterback play of Kirk Cousins. This is not an anti-Drake London thing. A couple of people were upset with his ranking earlier in the week. This is not anti-Drake London. It's the fact that Kirk Cousins is not playing at a high level right now, and that could definitely affect Drake London in a spot against the Vikings, where even though they give up a lot of points to fantasy wide receivers, they have been pretty tough for opposing quarterbacks. So I would not be shocked if this is a game where Kirk looks, just way out of his depth. And then my last wide receiver in this tier, Ladd McConkey, going up against the Chiefs. He was limited on Thursday, dealing with shoulder and knee injuries. He's been balling out, though, over his last 3 games. Has over 300 receiving yards. Clear number 1 target for the Chargers. If he's playing, he's going to be a lock in my lineup. Now, moving into tier 4, going to start off this tier with Malik Neighbors taking on the Saints. The volume has been there for him. In his last 5 games, he has 56 total targets. The dude just cannot get into the end zone. He has 0 touchdowns during that stretch. I'm still willing to follow the volume here. It's not like in PPR, he's like completely tanking your lineup. He's still giving you 10 plus. And with that type of volume, he's going to have a boom game, sometime soon. Then Tyreek Hill going up against the Jets. It's a bad matchup. They allow the fewest points per game to the wide receiver position, but he's coming off his best game since week 1. He's still Tyreek Hill, even if the production hasn't been quite as consistent. Another, top tier wide receiver heading into the season, CeeDee Lamb going up against the Bengals. He did not practice Thursday with his shoulder injury. Reports are, though, that he should be good to go for Monday, or he's planning on playing. The problem, though, is that you have an injured player, playing after everyone else, which is, somewhat iffy. He's averaging 12.4 points per game with Cooper Rush. I do like the matchup here, but the injury, the Monday night, not a great combo. Hopefully we get more info, but I still think he's fine in like this high-end wide receiver 2, fringe wide receiver 1 area. After Lamb, I have Jerry Jeudy going up against the Steelers, and it seems like Cedric Tillman is going to miss another game, which I do think is pretty big for Jeudy. He still has not practiced with that concussion. Week 13, massive 40 bomb out of Jerry Jeudy, but it's not like he hasn't been consistent. In his last 5 games, he's put up 12 plus PPR points in all of them. So James is going to have a lot of passing volume. He's going to be force feeding his, top targets, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku. If Tillman's out, Elijah Moore is also going to be getting a lot of love. So I have him here as my wide receiver 15, and I'd feel very confident playing him in my lineup. Then I have JSN going up against the Cardinals. 19 plus points in 3 of his last 4. He has outproduced DK Metcalf in both of the games, since DK's been back. Almost kind of, emerging here as the wide receiver 1 for the Seahawks. We'll see if he can keep it up, but I think at this point he does have to be ranked ahead of DK. Then I have DJ Moore going up against the 49ers. We'll say we should be monitoring this quad injury. He missed Thursday's practice, but he's coming off of back-to-back huge games. Week 12, 7 for 106 and a touchdown. Week 13, 8 for 97 and a touchdown. If he's healthy, I think he's a really nice wide receiver too. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Calvin Ridley going up against the Jaguars. Great matchup on paper. They are allowing the 3rd most points per game to the wide receiver position. And in his last 6, he's averaging 15.5 points per game. Now looking at tier 5, going to start off with Darnell Mooney going up against the Vikings. Like I talked about with Drake London, the Vikings are allowing the most points per game to the wide receiver position. Kirk Cousins' quarterback play a little bit iffy, but Mooney was kind of on a roll before his hamstring injury, had 14 plus in 3 straight games before he had to leave that one early. After Mooney, going to go with DK Metcalf. He did not practice Thursday with a shoulder injury. Seems like we have a lot of these wide receivers with like some nagging injuries here, missing practice on Thursday. I still think he's relevant in like the back end wide receiver 2 range, but production definitely hasn't been great as of late. In that same matchup, I have Marv going up against the Seahawks, coming off a season high 12 targets. He's still been a little bit boomer bust. He's not getting a lot of the gimme looks, like a Malik Neighbors is. I still think he's relevant as like a back end wide receiver 2, but you're just kind of hoping he can maintain the volume he saw last week. Then I have the Jets wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams. Honestly, just kind of your call on which dude you prefer. Garrett Wilson had the much better games early on in the pairing. Devontae Adams has been better as of late, but it's not like he's like going out there and killing it. Also just a bad matchup. The Dolphins are allowing the 2nd fewest points per game. I slightly prefer Garrett Wilson, but as you can see, they're back-to-back, so very, very close. I have Jawan Jennings as my wide receiver 24. At this point, he's like the 49ers' clear wide receiver 1. Debo seems to be drawing dead at this point. Jawan Jennings, nice back-end wide receiver 2 play. Then I have Devonta Smith going up against the Panthers. Looks like he will return this week, was a full participant with that hamstring injury. Like I talked about with A.J. Brown, this seems like it could be one of those low-volume passing games where the running backs are just feasting. Still a very talented player, high-end wide receiver 3 for me. A couple more guys in this tier. We have Keenan Allen going up against the 49ers. DJ Moore's had big last 2 games. So is Keenan Allen. Week 12, 9 for 86 and a touchdown. Week 13, 5 for 73 and 2 touchdowns. I think he especially gets a bump if DJ Moore ends up missing this game with a quad injury. But even if Moore is playing, Keenan Allen has still been producing. And then wrapping up this tier with Brian Thomas Jr. going up against the Titans. I have a tough time ranking BTJ because as a player, I'm very high on him. I liked him heading into the season. I was super impressed with his production early on. The Mac Jones at quarterback definitely makes things iffy here. Like if this was Trevor Lawrence, I'd probably have him locked into tier 4. Unfortunately, it's not. So in his 3 games with Mac Jones playing meaningful snaps, he's gone 2 for 12, 5 for 82, 4 for 76 and a touchdown. So he's had a couple of decent games. The problem is just that the floor does seem very low with that 2 for 12 game. I definitely think he's still playable as like a higher end wide receiver 3, but definitely not like super confident in him in my lineup. And then moving into tier 6, going to start off with Jordan Addison going up against the Falcons. It's a nice matchup. They're allowing the 8th most points per game to the wide receiver position. He's found some consistency in his last 3, 15.1, 30.2, 9.4 PPR points. Someone who has been very consistent also, but pretty much over the entire season, Khalil Shakir, not coming off a great week 13, but has put up double-digit PPR points in 9 of his 11 games this season. And you've got Keon Coleman, questionable with his wrist injury. You had Amari Cooper breaking in, not necessarily producing. Khalil Shakir has just been this steady option pretty much all season long. I have D-Hop going up against the Chargers up next here. The problem with DeAndre Hopkins is he's just not playing wide receiver 1 snaps. They're really limiting him. He's sitting at around like a 50% route participation, which for fantasy is not great. He's still averaging 12.8 PPR points with the Chiefs, still a talented wide receiver paired with Patrick Mahomes, but until we see like a major uptick in his routes, it's going to be tough to rank him any higher than this. Couple more guys in this tier. Jalen Waddle going up against the Jets. Week 13 was Not a huge game, but it was actually his third game hitting double-digit points. Overall, kind of a sad stat for someone who was drafted like round 2, round 3, but you're hoping, he can just build on these last 2 games. And then the last guy in this tier is a former Jet, Elijah Moore, going up against the Steelers. Coming off a pretty nice week 13 game. He's put up 16 plus points in 3 of his last 5. I think Cedric Tillman likely not playing is definitely big for Elijah Moore. And then the final tier here, tier 7. I will say we're getting pretty deep in the weeds here with 6 teams on bye. We have some, proven names within this tier, and then some guys who I never thought I'd be ranking for fantasy football. We're going to start off with Deebo Samuel going up against the Bears. He has gone for under 25 receiving yards in his last 3 games. My one hope here for Deebo is I wonder if they start to get him more involved as a running back. We know the injuries to CMC, to Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, was done before the season even started. I wonder if they, start to do a split here with Isaac Guerendo and Deebo Samuel. Now, maybe they don't because in the past when they've done that, they've had Brandon Ayuk out there. But, you have Jawan Jennings, you have Ricky Pearsall. I guess, the upside I'm hoping for here is that, Deebo gets involved as a running back. We've seen it in the past. Would not be shocked if it happens here moving forward. Then I have Nick Westbrook-Akine. It's a nice matchup against the Jaguars. They are top 3 in points per game allowed. And this season has honestly been so odd for him. He has 20 total receptions. 20 receptions. That is not a high number for someone who's pretty much played the entire season, but he has 8 touchdowns on those 20 catches. 8 touchdowns in his last 8 games. And I'm ranking him here as a back-end wide receiver 3. And I can almost guarantee you that with me finally putting him in the rankings, this is going to be the week where he does not catch a touchdown. But I feel like you have to give him his respect at some point. Like if you're going to be picking at the bottom of the barrel, I guess, you might as well play someone who's just consistently getting into the end zone. Hopefully he can keep it going, but the fact that he's hitting my rankings, I feel like that's going to be the end of it. Complete opposite situation here with Amari Cooper going up against the Rams. He scored under 8 PPR points in his last 3. It does seem like it's just a matter of time before he does have that breakout game, getting fully immersed into this offense. But since he hasn't had, big performances, I think, except for his first game with the Bills, tough to rank him much higher than this. I have Xavier Worthy as my wide receiver 36. Definitely a disappointing season, but he's had a few decent games back to back to back. In his last 3, he's gone 4 for 61 and a touchdown, 4 for 46, and then 5 for 54. It's honestly just been disappointing that him and Mahomes have not been able to connect down the field. That's been, the biggest L here for Worthy. Few more guys. We have Adam Thielen as my wide receiver 37. Coming off a big week 13, 8 for 99 and a touchdown. I think he could have had another touchdown. It was like a close call on whether or not he survived the ground. Not a good matchup, though, against the Eagles. They are bottom 5 in points per game allowed. I have Rome Odunze going up against the Niners. Hasn't been great as of late, but he's still commanding targets, 26 targets in his last 3 games. Then I have Marquez Valdez-Scantling going up against the Giants, another player who I thought I would never have to rank for fantasy. In his last 3 games with the Saints, he has gone 3 for 109 and 2 touchdowns, 2 for 87 and a touchdown, and then 2 for 36 and a touchdown. So he's had 7 total receptions in the last 3 games, but he's putting together really nice fantasy stat lines. I am very skeptical that this is something that's going to continue. I would not be shocked if he just puts up like pretty much no points for the next few weeks, but they're so decimated on offense. He's been a big play threat. This offense has been able to get some big plays even earlier on in the season, with a guy like Rashid Shaheed. So maybe he's found something here. Like I said, I'm skeptical, but 6 teams on bye, not a ton of options. And then the last guy is Parker Washington going up against the Titans. Really has done nothing for the majority of the season, but week 13 he goes out there. Injuries to Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk. He's targeted 12 times, catches 6 of them for 103 yards and a touchdown. I'm also skeptical that Parker Washington is going to be something for fantasy, but 12 targets, something we should pay attention to. He's going to close out these rankings here. Thank you all for stopping by. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Check out the running backs, which I'll be posting later today. But thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.